So here I am again with the bluebell and the sound of a thrush, actually, not a blackbird. Same group, but very much more complicated song. Right, let me run through this very quickly because I've had a chance to look at my videos back and get clear on how to make this video. Right, so the key thing here, first of all, is this is a week later now, and the real bluebell is quite different now from the bluebell on the video. Because if you look, I'm trying to show that the carpels have begun to swell. So the bluebell is changing, the real bluebell is changing. Well, if we go back to the video that I made last week, that bluebell is totally unchanged. Digital copy of the light that was present there last week looks the same then as it did then, now as it did then. Whereas the real bluebell is a living thing and is undergoing changes. So its flowers are pollinated. The image can't do that. And of course, I've changed because I'm a week older than I was last week. And again, I'm in front of the camera, whereas when I watch my video back, I'm obviously I'm behind the camera. So yes, it's this fact that the video cannot capture reality. It's freezing the light in a recorded form. But it is not capturing the reality. So this is going to be the general point of this video, that when we think about things, we kind of record them. And that limits our interaction with things, because thoughts, like videos, are permanent, fixed things. So you can describe something, write it down, put it in tablets, which is a preoccupation of the past, like Moses going up on the hill and writing the law in tablets. Words are fixed, whereas the living world is in well, listen to it. There's that thrush giving out a unique song that I've never heard before, no one's ever heard before. The wind's blowing. I didn't describe the smell of the bluebells. It's very sweet, almost a honey smell. There aren't enough here, but it's quite gentle. If you go to a bluebell wood, it's rich, the smell. I also didn't say that it's the day after David Attenborough's 100th birthday, and it was a magnificent thing the BBC put together. Genuinely an important person, done a great service to the world. But the one thing, there are many layers to nature, many layers, and the point of my videos is what you might say the deepest layer, because I think a lot of nature exists at quite a superficial level. So, was it David Shepherd was the painter? Spectacular paintings of nature, filmmaking, spectacular records of nature. And a lot of people said that David Attenborough taught them a lot. They learned a lot. Yes, this is all perfectly good stuff, but it's only a superficial level. Because like I was saying, this is knowledge. These are fixed things. They're recording nature. And that then continued into the Victorian practice of, first of all, shooting things, because they didn't have very good recording equipment. But then we still use the word shooting to make a film, to shoot a film. So we still effectively shoot the animal, trap it in some way. I used to do this as a kid. Gerald Orrell, David Attenborough, I think it was something all kids do. But we capture the animal. We try and grasp it in some way, paint it, record it, film it in any way, put it in a cage, stick it in a zoo, have it as a trophy. The people shooting over there, I mean, I don't think they put pheasants' heads on trophy shields, but you know, people who kill deer and stuff, or go into Africa and shoot big game. It's not game, but anyway, yeah, they keep their trophy heads. So all that layer of nature is about trapping it, recording it, essentially stifling it of life. Whereas these videos, I'm trying to capture the thing that can't be captured on tape, which is that life lives. And tape is dead. There's no life. Celluloid heroes don't die. So in a world of media where we think a recording of a Tasmanian devil is at least a record of it, or maybe some DNA in a bank is a record of it, that's not life. Those are dead records. And even if you recreate it, even if you recreate it, you've got to be careful that you don't just create a walking, talking animatronic Tasmanian devil, or a dodo, or a mammoth, because chances are the motivation to make it is to have another zoo thing, to have another thing that's a record. You know, we'll think of mammoths as a record of the past, and we create a new one, stick it in a zoo, everyone goes and sees it. But that's not what life is. Life is free and evolving and changing and ungraspable. You can't think life. And that will then, in a minute, get onto my quick summary of the fact there's no self in life. And then that will go on to a criticism of conservation. But just before that, very quickly, the one thing by David Attenborough, of course, they were saying that he's seen more wildlife than any other living human being ever, travelled the world, 62 countries or whatever, and recorded thousands of different species. Spectacular array of life, mind-boggling. What an extraordinary planet. But you don't need to travel to see extraordinary things. These bluebells, humble little bluebells, who are nevertheless absolutely stunning. These ones are very past it now, but they are beautiful. They're beautiful and charming. There was something very English about them, something mystical and magical. If you go into a deep forest, there's nothing around, and then in a beam of sunlight breaking through the trees, there's a bluebell. It's quite sublime moments, but we have to be careful a little bit, given what I'm saying about recording, that I can definitely get trapped in the desire to experience the sublime, like the romantic poets, when the wilderness became a romantic target. So time was when wilderness was full of bandits and ghosts. In fact, I know people from the Far East who still think that trees have spirits, and it's not a bad way to think, actually, and I could probably go into that. It's not wrong. It's not a wrong way to think, but it means that nature can be quite challenging, because you feel that you're encroaching on the domain of other beings, and then there are bandits and thieves, and it was considered a place of outlaws, Robin of Sherwood, and a frightening place for the civilized, so people didn't come out into nature. Then the Romantics took it over, reclaimed it, but they made it into an artistic, dramatic, emotional, visceral experience. And then science, I think, claimed it off them. So yeah, nature goes through its rebirths. But I again want to go to bottom level, I think, and returning to the extraordinary in the ordinary. These little chaps here, which are very sweet, beautiful, magical flowers growing all by themselves in this forest, they are common bluebells, of which the UK or even England has more than half the world's population, and all the bluebells in the world exist on the Atlantic coast of Europe, half in England and the other half over the Channel in France, Belgium. So these are very common, and we take them for granted in England, but you could travel the world and never see another one. And that's the thing I always find slightly unusual, that we travel the world. And I have done this many times. You go to far places and then you see things that you discover you've got at home. So I like the longhorn beetles, and I went to Lake District on holiday when I was younger, and found a longhorn beetle and thought, oh, this is an extraordinary thing. Came home and saw one. So you often are more, when you're abroad, or away from home, your senses are more heightened, and you see things that you think are new, and you come home and they were there all along. Well, here is a very good example that the bluebell we take for granted is a genuinely extraordinary thing, and easily taken for granted. But a David Attenborough from another part of the world may come all the way to England just to see this, which we have on our doorstep. So the extraordinary in the ordinary, nature is extraordinary everywhere. And if you travel to a deep, distant forest in Borneo or somewhere to see the extraordinary, to the people who live there, it's ordinary. So yeah, I kind of disagree with that colonial attitude of conquering new lands. Everywhere someone's home, and everything is both ordinary and extraordinary. You just have to see it with fresh eyes. So imagine that you've never seen one of those before, and you've come from a desert, and that is truly luscious and beautiful. Such a beautiful colour of violety blue, and the smell is very sweet and gentle. And now let's quickly do the deepest level, right? So the self. And I can do it very efficiently now because I've watched these videos back and seen what I've been trying to do. And the best way to record it maybe is, yes, I have to do it. Well, I'm going to do it. There's got to be, the point of this is, there are two perspectives. There's your perspective and my perspective. And that is critical. So if I just do your perspective first. So you can see me looking at this flower, and for you as the third person, here's the flower, there's this gap to my eye, light has to travel across that gap, and then it goes into my eye, and if you could get a little camera in there, you could see the image forming on my retina, and then neurons, and you could do brain scans and all kinds of things to have a look at activity in my brain that corresponds to all that, and then there'll be some speech center activity, and then my mouth will move and I will speak and I will go looking at the bluebell, and that's all third person, and you can see all that happening. Now let's switch to your description. Remember, I can see what you just saw, but for you, here's the bluebell, here is the gap of light, which in my case I can see goes into a camera, and then there's electronics in there which records the light, and then it will be put on YouTube, and then the computer will pick up the signal, and the screen will recreate that array of light, which will then go into your retina and complete the same circuit and activity that you've just seen in me. But, and this is the point, as a first person, you're not you haven't stepped outside the stream of, you're not able to get a perspective outside seeing the bluebell, because this entire process of the bluebell here and the light going through into the camera and all the electronics, and then the computer creating more light, and then that going into your retina, and then that stimulating your brain, that entire process is seeing the bluebell. And that's the extraordinary thing. When you see it for a third person, you're thinking. So when you see me, you're thinking it. You're thinking, here's a bluebell. You're thinking the gap. You're analysing what you can see. But when you do it from the first person, that is you seeing. So when there's a bluebell here, when you can see a bluebell, that is because you're seeing a bluebell, which sounds stupid. But I think what I haven't probably explained is that a common way of thinking about this is that the bluebell is somehow real, and then over here, sitting watching the computer screen is you. And then you're seeing the bluebell. But that's not true, because for there to be a bluebell in front of you at all, it must have been seen. So the seeing is happening here. The thing that you can see is the seeing, which means that the person on the other side of the computer screen is not separate. It's not a separate entity looking at the bluebell. The person on the other side of the computer screen is critically important as part of the chain of events that leads to this bluebell existing. So, as a first person, you yourself are integrated into seeing the bluebell. There is no you that's separate. What is the sound of a tree falling in a forest when there's no one there? The point is, someone has to be there to make the sound at all. It's not that the sound happened in the forest and then someone turned up and heard it. When the sound has been heard, there needs to be a tree falling and there needs to be somebody there. And the sound is the person being there and hearing it. It's not that the sound happened and then someone heard it. The sound is someone hearing it. And likewise, seeing a bluebell is someone seeing it. It's not there's a bluebell and then there's someone seeing it. When you see this bluebell, that is what you seeing a bluebell is. The very presence of the bluebell here is seeing. And then there's nobody actually seeing that. Nobody separate. Because when the bluebell turns up, that itself is the seeing. So there's no you attached to seeing or any senses. You are in the sense. You are in the sensing, shall I say. So if you wish to identify where you are right now, you can do what the Hindus do, Tattvamasi. Tattvamasi is that I am that, effectively, or Tao is that. And what that is saying is that you're not a third person looking in upon the process of seeing. You are the process of seeing. So there's nobody seeing the bluebell, because the bluebell is the seeing. If you want to know where you are, you're there. Well, you're there. When you see a bluebell, that is you. Now, Buddhism says that's slightly wrong, and this is where I think it gets very subtle. Because if you start looking for yourself in the bluebell, you haven't actually gained the wisdom. Tattvamasi is a step, but it's not the conclusion. So you can definitely identify that there's no self looking at the bluebell, because the bluebell is the self looking at the bluebell. So there's no separate self. But actually there's one step further, because once you've identified that there's no self, you can just have the bluebell. You just have the bluebell. And then you think, well, hold it, that's not quite true, because surely I'm looking at the bluebell. That sense that you're looking at the bluebell is something that your brain puts in as a process of modeling to understand the world. So if we examine what looking at a bluebell is actually like, first of all, there's the bluebell. That's the seeing. So it's already been seen when it turns up. And then your brain, after processes it, and says, well, how has it been seen? And then it introduces a thought about it's being seen because I'm looking at it. That's what's actually going on. It's very quick. We don't normally separate the two. So we go around the whole world as a third person. But we've already discussed that. When you're third person to me, you can see the gap between the bluebell and my eye, and you can genuinely see, you could get a brain scan and everything, and you can genuinely observe what the vision looks like from a scientific process perspective. But that is not the same as what you're at the actual experience of seeing it, because the actual experience of seeing the bluebell is the bluebell. So the third person and the first person are fundamentally different. The first person creates an actual experience, whereas the third person is just some thoughts about how it happens. You can't see what I'm seeing. You can just analyze various components. So what the brain does is it mixes a first and a third person. The first person is the presence of the world. So if I scan this camera around to the forest, you can hear the birds, you can hear the wind, you can feel the wind if you're me. And this light is now being recorded, and it will be recreated by the cameras, by the computer screen from YouTube data. And it will enter your eye, and your brain will interact with it, and it will create a vision of a forest. And that vision of a forest that you see is only possible because you're interacting with this data. So if you want to know where you are right now, you are one of the conditions for this manifestation of a forest. So you're not looking at this forest. You're already present in the forest for it to even happen in the first place. The you that you think is looking at it is late. It's been stuck in by the brain as it tries to understand how this vision appeared. But your eyes have already seen it, and your brain has already processed it and turned it into a forest. And the forest is there, and then you try and understand how that happened, and you understand that you're looking at it. But that you that's looking at it isn't doing anything. It has no eyes and it can't think. It's a thought about how this manifestation has occurred. Now, that misunderstanding of how the natural world happens, the habitual thought that I am sitting here listening to that bird is wrong. That bird song is only there because I'm listening to it. So I am already here in the bird song. It's like if I was a builder, I'm already hard at work creating that bird song, creating the sound of the bird song. And so by the time I walk into the house of the bird song, it's already been built. I can hear it. There it is. That is the experience of a bird singing and being heard. That is what hearing a bird is. The builders have already done the work. So the person who's walking into the house is not the person who's hearing it. And I'm just repeating myself many, many times now to get this over. So when we're in nature and we hear something, we are much more intimately associated with nature than we commonly think. When we watch a David Attenborough documentary, we don't understand. I mean, I just choose that. It's literally true for all our lives, but it's a lot easier in nature because nature doesn't have a self. When the lion kills the wildebeest, there's no self, either in the lion or the wildebeest. We impose all these thoughts afterwards. That's why nature can seem cruel. But that cruelty comes in an after process. And we think, oh my God, I wouldn't like to be the wildebeest. It doesn't have the luxury of such a thought. It is currently being attacked. So I mean, this is a really, really deep philosophical thing. Well, no, it's not even philosophy. This is the nature of experience, the nature of nature. That and okay, I'll make this final move because this is the really important thing. I keep referring to the self, but I'm teetering on the edge of it doesn't serve any purpose. The birdsong is being heard, and we just leave it there. You don't have to invoke a self there. And certainly, if you do invoke a self, it's not an identity self. It's not a discrete person. It would be neurons, brains, those kind of things, processes that you would call the self. But why bother? So yeah, you're not here, and that's not just a trick of philosophy. That's the truth. The trick of philosophy is the other way around. It's the belief that I'm here is the trick. And that's the mistake. And when you see that it's a mistake, then nature is just there. So it's a strange middle ground. Like I'm just listening to the thrush. I think it's the thrush. I should know my birds better. It's definitely one of the turdus. Could be a blackbird. That one could be a blackbird. They could be both. Just listening to it. So we're not saying that the blackbird is creating that song, because that's clearly being heard. There's someone hearing it. But we're not going to the other extreme of saying that I am somehow creating the song in my head. That's not true either. It's the middle ground. There needs to be the blackbird, and there needs to be a brain and an ear listening to it. And in that middle ground, you get that sound. So in your case, I'm recording the sound so that your computer can make the sound. You being me, because I'm going to watch this back. I'm recording the sound so that your computer can recreate that sound, so that your ear can hear it, and your brain can then complete the process of hearing to create that sound. And then you will think, I am hearing the blackbird. But you can only do that because there's the sound there, and that can only happen because your brain and your ear and the computer that's got in the way to record and recreate all this, and then the original blackbird that's living over here, singing his heart out on his territory. It's only because of that entire process in the first place that's already happened. The builders have already been at work to create that sound, that you then go, I am now hearing the blackbird. So you go, oh, I can hear it. That clearly comes after the actual sound. And for the sound to be there, you have already heard it. So this self that we're so familiar with is late. It's late to the party. The house has been built. The sounds have been had. The world's been experienced. The forest is there. And this is the very deepest of the Eastern philosophies. Hinduism, Buddhism, I mean, they're just words. world is already happened, or is already happening. And there doesn't need to be a self involved. Now, it's not that there isn't a self, because it's very useful to think about a self. So certainly I will think about what I've got to do tomorrow, Sunday today, and I will think about all kinds of things that are related to the self. But that's like holding an accounts book, and I keep a ledger, and that's all it is. It's just a ledger. And that self that I attribute everything to is a mental creation. It's quite a useful one. But that self can be any number of things. It's not real. Well, is a blackbird real? It's a name, and I think in other countries they would have a different name for it. So the name is not fixed. A guy called Gilbert White, he was a reverend, I believe, a parish priest. Was a very famous naturalist in the 1800s, and he was the first guy apparently who was able to tell the difference between two birds that we have here, the migrant's chiff-chaff and the migrant's willow warbler. And they're crudely similar, but they have different songs, different behaviours, different leg colours. Once you know the difference, they're very different, but no one had really noticed the difference. And Gilbert White noticed the difference, and he gave the two birds different names. Now, up until that point, they'd been the same bird, little brown job, migrant little brown job that turned up in spring. So, are we to say there are two birds, and all those years we got it wrong? Are we to say that Gilbert White created a second bird? And yeah, then you get into, what is species, what is classification, and how does the brain categorize the world? I'm sure we'd be happy with two species. Maybe in the future they'll find that there are subspecies in there, and we recategorize it all again. So the living world is a mess, and the boundaries are not so precise. I'm not saying there aren't boundaries, but I'm also saying then they're not fixed and they're not solid. So again, it's kind of a middle path thing. So the brain is definitely doing useful work. All these categorizings, putting the self in, it's all very useful stuff. But the point we're making is that at the very root base of all this, there's no self out here. No one sitting here, no self out there. Nature has no self. And then that gets us onto conservation, because if you think how people talk about conservation, we need to conserve, we need to do this, we need to do the other. This is a third person perspective. And if we go back to this bluebell, the bluebell blowing in the wind there is only blowing in the wind because I'm looking at it. Or you're looking at it. If I turn this camera away and point somewhere else, you can't see the bluebell. So the bluebell's blowing away in the wind, but you can't see anything. For you to see it, the camera must be pointing at it, and you must be looking at it. So there must be you watching, the computer must be working, the camera must have recorded it, just check it's still recording, yeah. And the bluebell must be here, blowing in the wind. The real one, with its swelling carpels, with the seeds developing. All that must be true. So there's no one to conserve that, because it's just happening. There's no self involved. The experience, the unique experience that you're having right now, looking at this, well, they're slightly different because I can't have that experience again because I'm not recording this. I'm looking at the actual bluebell. You can rewind this and play it again, you being me, because I'm going to watch this back. So you can replay this, but at this particular moment in time, as you look at this particular version of the replay, that particular moment in your life, it's totally unique. And there's no you involved. Well, there is, if we're going to go down that road again. But the you's already happened. The you as the builder who's already created the view of that bluebell. Whereas the conservation you is the one that pops in on top and goes, oh look, I'm looking at a bluebell. Oh, that's a nice feeling. I like that. We should conserve those. Or try and make it more scientific and go, oh, bluebells are really important to the environment because they're early flowers for insects, or because they're indicator species, proof of ancient forest, which I guess, I mean, this can't be that ancient, I don't know. Maybe it's ancient forest that got damaged in the storm of 87 has been replanted. I don't know. Don't know the history of this area. But I think these are supposed to be indicator species. So science can come up with rational explanations. But the self, the brain that's doing, sorry, not the brain, the kind of activity that the brain does, the thinking part of the brain is doing this. It's thinking about what this experience is. It's thinking about these bluebells. It's thinking about me and what I can do, what I like, what my values are, how I can persuade other people. And that thinking self is not present here. Because the self is needed to build the experience. When I say self, there's two types of self I'm referring to here. There's the thinking self, which is the one we're familiar with. It's got our name, it's got our memories, it's got our identity, who we think we are. And then I'm using self very loosely to kind of refer to the actual brain, eyes, and person. No, wrong word. Body, shall we say. Body-mind complex. Not, I mean, it's best to drop it. But there's a body here and an eye that's necessary to see. That's true. But you can't really give it a name. It's a living thing like the bluebell. And I keep saying in the previous videos, the self with the small s that's here right now that I can't capture on tape, because tomorrow when I look at this back, I'm going to be the guy behind the camera, and the guy in front of the camera here, where will he be? So that small self, the real one, which is in the same world as this button, as this bluebell, we are connected together to create this experience that I'm having, and you, in your current existence, are connected together through the camera to have that experience. That small self is, it's not really a discrete thing. It's changing. It doesn't have a name, and it's good to drop it. It's good to drop it. Best to just look at the experience. We're not going to think about some noumenal bluebell. We're not going to think about some noumenal person. These are thoughts. We're just going to have the experience, and that experience is just that experience, and there's no one there. But then we think about it, going back to that, and we think that I am looking at the bluebell, and we think I can conserve it, and we have all these conservation thoughts. So my point here is, conservation is post hoc. It's an after the event thing, and it doesn't appreciate the true nature of nature, which is that there is nobody here. And when you take a walk in the park or a walk in the forest, no one is doing that. There are just the experiences, the bird songs, the trees, the bluebells. And it comes and it goes just like that. 1 minute the bird song's there, the next minute it isn't. This is the nature of reality. There's no one listening. There is just the song. And that song is momentary. This is nature. And yet we're destroying the world. And then we start thinking about it and we go, well, you know, if I don't do something, they're going to turn this into a car park or something, you know, to quote old, put up a parking lot, what's her name? Joni Mitchell. So there is this sense of the advance of capitalism, the advance of money, progress in inverted commas, the march of development and the catastrophic damage that does, the mindless destruction in pursuit of what? And we see that and we panic and we react and we think that it's doing harm. Technically it isn't, because there's nothing here to be harmed, and technically no one's harming because there's no one there to harm. But there is nevertheless something wrong with it. And the thing that's wrong with it, in the same way as there's something wrong with conservation, the motivation for capitalism is the same self with a big S that we think. If we didn't think that big S, we wouldn't be doing 99% of the stuff we're doing. Because if you think about it, the reason I have a big car is because I have an image of myself as being maybe worth a big car, or maybe better than the self of 10 years ago who had a small car. Or I need some thinkable entity to firmly prove that this big S self is who he thinks he is. But that's the point. You think you are who you are, but you're not actually. Because the real you, if we can even call it that, is there. It's already, the builders have already been at work. That is the greatest achievement of the self, being able to see a bluebell. And being able to see a bluebell is indistinguishable from there being a bluebell. So we just do away with this language of me looking at bluebells. When there's a bluebell, that is me seeing it. So we just do away with the me. Just a bluebell. And a magnificent manifestation. And then I think also what was missing in the... So yeah, first of all, conservation depends upon this big S self. It's a thought process. And I think it's motivated by capitalism and economic development. But that itself is a big S, because the goal of economic development is the glorification and the proof of this thought self. And it's a relative self. So you'll never be happy, because the self that had the undergraduate degree now wants the master's degree, so that it's grown and it's better than the past self. And then it's going to have a small house and a big house, and then it's going to have 1 child and 2 children, 3 children, and it's going to get job promotions, and it's going to constantly be looking to prove that it's growing and it's better. When in actual fact, the real self, which we aren't really going to talk about because it doesn't exist, but the real self is looking at bluebells the same today as it was 20 years ago when he was a kid or whatever. Because that is what we do. We've got eyes. Okay, we've got a brain and we think. But the thinker, the Descartes' mistake, the thinker is like the seer of the bluebells. It's invented. The bluebell is the seer, and the thought is the thinker. Which means we do away with the thought and the seer, because if the seer is the bluebell, there's just the bluebell, and if the thinker is the thought, there's just the thought. And the rest is just thoughts. So it all comes together. And then going right back to my first ever videos on the mysterious origin. So I just did long videos recording just the question of the kind of Heideggerian question of Isn't it extraordinary that it's all here in the first place? We get used to it because we think. We lay it over with thoughts. We just think. We think, I know a bluebell, I've seen a bluebell, I've got it on my checklist, I've got it on my species list, I've seen it, I know it. And people talking in David Attenborough's thing yesterday were saying they know things. David taught them things. But that's not the point. I know a bluebell, but not this one. And not right now. I'm enjoying this experience again. And the only reason I'm enjoying it again is because I can remember having done it before. But there's nothing like the present moment. Because this is me in the bluebell. Now. Sod my memories. And there's no me looking at this bluebell, because the bluebell is me. So that idea that I've seen one is just a thought. I can forget that thought. I mean, it's true. I have seen many of them. So you can see with fresh eyes. Fresh self. Fresh everything. So you never grow tired. And I think the problem with the knowledge is you can grow tired. And you can grow divorced from nature. Because you start to think you've seen it all. I bumped into a guy who was having some personal difficulties. And then, out of nowhere, a water rail walked out. And we'd both seen a water rail. But this one was bold as brass. They're very shy. And he was suddenly transported out of his gloom. And though he'd seen a blue water rail before, he'd never seen one this close and this bold. And he forgot all about himself. And the ice was broken. And he was seeing the world with fresh eyes again. So it's easy to get trapped in our thoughts. Very easy to get trapped in our thoughts. And getting trapped in our thoughts is getting trapped in ourselves. Thought is a sense. It happens. We're not denying it, but we're just getting clear on what's going on. So meditation is very much about unpicking the thoughts. Being clear that the thought self, when we think I, it's just a thought. And being very clear that the experience is real and involves us, intimately involves us. Because that's not just a bluebell, that is seeing a bluebell. There's the active process of being seen, which is how it's going through the computer screen and how it's appearing in front of you. And it's that sense of the magic of that. I mean, how does seeing happen? Okay, science is going to learn about it. And we haven't quite finished. I say we. Consciousness isn't understood yet. So we don't understand it all yet. But even when we do understand it, it doesn't change the fact that we already can do it. You can't add anything. No one needs to be taught how to see. Because we can do it already. So science can't add anything. No amount of thinking can change the fact that we can already do it. Can already manifest the extraordinary bluebell. And it's that manifestation of the world that we, even when we can understand it, doesn't change the fact that we are doing it already. It's already happening. And that the world has given us this. It has given us nature, or nature has given us nature, because I'm saying nature is the origin of all of this. It's the stars, it's the forces of nature. Nature is the raw unfolding reality. The nature of my body. I mean, God knows, people have had bodies since the beginning of humanity, but we're only just beginning to understand stuff about them. Again, we're thinking the hand, we're thinking the arm, and yet we've had it all along. Whether we can understand it or not, nature is working for us already. I mean, how the hell? It's extraordinary, isn't it? So this is all nature, it's gifts from nature. And the thinking that we stick on top, like the thinking of the self that we stick on top, is stuck on top. But the raw reality is already given and it's already there. And that gift, the mysterious origin, We don't know how the gift happened. And we have to admit that the gift is already there. And I think that covers all my little things about nature, without going into capitalism too much. Because nature boys from like the early 20th century, the German movement of people who ran off, the proto-hippies who ran off into nature to try and commune with nature. I'm very much supportive of that attitude, or like the good life, trying to become self-sufficient, all these kind of things. I'm supportive of this idea, but the point is you don't need to do anything to be in nature, because you already are. And I know people say that, I say, oh, we are part of nature, but no, we're not even part of nature. The very existence of this, the very present, I wouldn't say existence, the very manifestation, the beautiful thing that's here already is us. It proves that we're looking, we are seeing, we are the seeing. So just to walk in the park, the presence of the park is you. So we're first level entities in nature. And I mean in the, not just nature as in like a rafflesia flower in Borneo. I don't just mean the types of things in nature. I mean the very gift of reality, of nature, already includes us. Now that's the thing, is that should be satisfying, and that's the thing. We should already be satisfied. We don't need anything else, which is when the nature boys and the hippies and everybody are correct. That seen with fresh eyes, seen with wonderment. Like you can imagine a child, when this child sees a butterfly for the first time, it is overwhelmingly beautiful and entertaining and thrilling, and it already has everything. But then we get to know it and we replace that butterfly with thoughts. And particularly the worst bit is replace it with the self, and we go, I have seen that. So yeah, we all produce our nature lists, species lists, which is awfully good fun because we get our dopamine hits. But those lists can begin to replace the raw experience of nature. So you don't need to travel the planet. You can come a few kilometers like I've jogged, and you can see things with fresh eyes again and just enjoy being with them and experiencing them. And then the nagging doubts will be the thought self, the identity self, all the things like I should be doing something else, I should be getting on a plane and flying somewhere exotic, I should have a better video to put on YouTube, I should, just the nagging doubts that are all associated with what we think about ourselves. And none of them can hold a candle to what our self is really good at, which is manifesting nature. And I wonder, it's a long video, I wonder whether just to cover the capitalism thing, because I'm getting there a bit. Do we chuck it all in? You see, this is the great, the great desire to throw it all in and go and live like Walton in a shed in the forest. ChatGPT does point out that if we all did that, we'd destroy the planet, because there's 8 billion of us, and we need intensive agriculture just to feed ourselves. And we all need to live in high-rise flats just to reduce the pressure on the land. Yes, we're kind of stuck the way we live, which is fine. But the thing I'm very conscious of is we need to be happy with what we've got. The endless need to gratify that thought self, the relative self, the need to be a bit bigger tomorrow, a bit better, and yeah, to not just see a bluebell, but maybe tomorrow to see a forest of bluebells, or maybe up my species and see something else. There's a value to that. Dopamine. It's intellectually interesting. We can start recording things, get books. I mean, I'm learning my insects gradually. So yeah, this all it's sort of stimulating, exciting stuff. But we should never ever let that should replace the raw experience and the magic of the manifestation of reality in our senses. And we should say goodbye to this bluebell, because looking at its carpels, it's not going to be here long. And that's the other thing about nature, which maybe is why we like to grasp, make videos, take photos, make records, because we do like to grasp at things, and we don't like them going, particularly when they're beautiful like this. But then of course that's the nature of the living world, which, as I'm going back and back over things, is the feature that can't be put on tape. Because while I can photograph this bluebell for eternity, and if the YouTube servers don't go down and my account doesn't get cancelled, then this bluebell will be on the internet for a long time. But the real one here, the living one, sad to say, will be gone in a week or two. I mean, these flowers anyway. And the parent plant, I don't know how long a bluebell lives. Should we give it a name? I don't know. I thought Pygmalion for some reason. But that's not entirely appropriate. Just call it Maria. Now it's got a name, you see. I can permanently give it, instantly giving it a name attracts the mind. So now it's called Maria. I've got something fixed to hang on to. And now this is a very special bluebell because it's got a name. So this is how quickly you can create a self. It's just a mental process. So now she's got a self. Well, Maria, I think it's definitely time to say goodbye. And hopefully I've covered everything. I'll probably watch this back and see still things I can improve and mistakes, and I'm learning myself. I'll keep the camera rolling just a bit. I'm going to go over there actually. So there's all sorts of processes. I'm going to go over there because I've seen a bit of the forest that looks quite interesting I've never looked at before. So it's not all about just sitting in one place meditating on the mystery of how the senses and reality and the world happens. But it's, there's other things. We can definitely do species counts. We can explore, look for new things. And there's all kinds of experiences to be had. The sublime, I think, is one of the most important for me. When you've been alone for hours, maybe days is a good one, 3 days is a good one. Go walking for a week. And after the first 2 days, you've attuned now to the environment. You've left your previous domestic life behind, and now you're attuned to the nature. I mean, I'm attuned to nature in England because I've lived here for so long. If I was to go to a jungle, I would have to go with the local people who would be already attuned. They could teach me things. But here I'm familiar. A couple of days, and I'm attuned. Your mind is silent, and you're really experiencing things as they are. And then you can walk into situations where your mind can really believe that there are spirits, fairies. It has a quality to it that's magical and supernatural. I mean that in the sense of, it's beyond, it's above nature. So this is the mind playing games, but it's a genuine experience, and it's a very precious experience. And it's not a necessary experience. You don't have to experience that every time you go out. But it just reminds you the deep emotional connection that we have with the natural world. And I'm not going to criticize cities. I already said they're critically important to conservation and to the future of the planet, because we need efficiency just to survive now, because there are so many of us and we have such complex needs. But we could think maybe about not getting any more. It's just getting bigger and more complicated all the time. It's just not changing anything. It's just relative existence. You know, when you bought the biggest car there is, what do you do next? Just stick with what you got. Right, I'm going to go over there. And there was one thing I keep forgetting to say, actually, so I will say it. The issue of the non-self actually is very profound, and it becomes most noticeable with the subject of death. So non-self is not to say we don't die. I mean, everywhere there's death here. You can see tree branches that have come down, and they're now dead. And the bluebells, well, as I think I said, I don't know how long a bluebell lives, but we can see very clearly when we talk about death, who's dying? We've already said that the thought self isn't real and it's interjected, stuck in on top, a model, an explanation, a way of thinking about how the experience of the world happens. But that dies right now if you want. Stop thinking about yourself. Just have the experience. The thought self that we've worried about dying doesn't even exist. We've invented it. So the actual self that dies, well, there's no self that dies. Death is a process. It's a process of getting old, process of shutting down. But it doesn't happen to anyone. And there's no one to die. So death becomes just something like the manifestation of the world that happens. But it doesn't happen to anyone. So we're free from these concerns. And that's an example of the difference between the relative existence and the actual existence. That the thought self that has a discrete identity, has discrete qualities and features and memories and facts about it. The relative self that is alive, that we attribute life to, and then we will attribute death to. This self goes through turmoil. Being bigger, being smaller, being alive, being dead. Because the modelling brain's catching up all the time and trying to understand what this thing is doing. So this one, my brain can easily sit here and go, I am talking to the camera. And to be absolutely honest, I have only just done that for the purposes of the video. At no point here have I thought, oh, I'm in front of a... Well, I've talked about myself in front of the camera, but I haven't identified with being the camera maker, the filmmaker. And that's a thought I've only just had for the purposes of this. So, yeah. If we're just a little bit careful in how we think, we can really tease this apart in a very satisfactory way. Well, I wish I could keep the video going, actually. There's so much going on. So there was a buzzard flying overhead there. We've got a couple of blackbirds here. And that seems a bit of a territorial argy-bargy, that does. I mean, we're not saying people don't get aggressive, things don't happen. It's all kicking off. Yeah, wow. So there's lots of rapid heartbeats there. Don't know if they use testosterone in the bird world to get them all razzed up. So yeah, there's plenty of argy-bargy and stuff. It's not just sitting around like a hippie. But if we do ever engage the self, the conceptual one that says my land, get off, we drop it because that's conceptual. Right, I have talked for way too long and my batteries are running out, and making videos is slightly unnatural. So it's been a huge pleasure, and I will now turn off. Thank you very much.